This video is supported by CuriosityStream. You want to hear a sobering thought? It's literally like 2 weeks away from 2020, and we are still getting most of our energy from burning things. Just like we did back in caveman days. Like, that was the very first source of energy we ever had, burning things. And somehow now, all these millennia later, we still can't seem to move beyond that. That's still where we get most of our energy, even though we now know it's pumping horrible amounts of pollutants up into the atmosphere that's threatening our way of life. This is why you're hearing so much talk about transitioning to things like wind and solar and renewables to clean up our energy grid. There's only one problem. Renewables kind of suck. Look, I'm a fan of renewables. That's why I talk about them all the time on this channel. I want to see them grow. We need to see them grow. But still, every time you bring that up, some of the anti-green people, they always say things like this. Wind and solar are fine, but I mean, like, what are you going to do at night? What happens when the wind doesn't blow? And the thing that pisses me off when people say that is, they're kind of right. Renewable energy, especially wind and solar, they do have that one major problem of intermittency. That's actually the advantage of burning things, you know? You can have total control over how much energy you create. Need more energy? Just burn more things. So if we really do truly want to transition to renewable energy, we have to find massive industrial scale energy storage solutions. Luckily, we found some ways of doing exactly that, some of which are pretty cool. So let's just start by talking about energy. Like, what is energy? What is this thing that we're needing to store in the first place? According to Wikipedia, energy is defined as a quantitative quality that must be applied to an object in order to do work on the object or to add heat to the object. And this usually takes the form of mechanical, chemical, nuclear, or electrical energy. And according to the law of conservation of energy, it can neither be created nor destroyed, only transformed. So, solar energy gets locked away in photosynthetic plants, which over millions of years becomes coal. That chemical energy in coal is released when burning it, turning it into kinetic energy that turns a turbine, that turns a generator, that creates electrical energy. That's distributed to your home where you plug in your phone and it gets turned back into chemical energy in your phone's batteries. Later, this energy is used by your phone to do computations, generate light, and escape as heat. All electricity production and storage is basically just finding new and clever ways to transform energy from one type into another type. That's basically what we're talking about here. So let's just say you're a utility company and your job is to provide electricity to the community around you. The first thing you need to figure out is, what is your baseload power need? Baseload energy is basically the minimum amount necessary to meet a consumer demand in a particular area. Like, what is the absolute minimum necessary to meet consumer demand, say, 80% of the time? Like, you don't want to overproduce power because then you're just wasting all that energy, which as an energy company you paid for in one way or another. So it's all about kind of finding the minimum amount to produce that will maximize your profits. Capitalism. This fine-tuning, this specific amount of energy that you want your plant to be producing at all times, it requires a very easily adjustable energy source. And right now, anyway, fossil fuels are the simplest answer. Need more heat? Just add more coal. It's the perfect solution, with the minor downside of eventually destroying the planet. The term destroying the planet is just a joke. We're not going to destroy the planet. We just might not be able to live in it the way we used to. So everybody just... Now, of course, sometimes the energy level spikes up above the baseload power, and that's where peaker plants come in. Peaker plants kick in to handle any kind of power spike that goes over the baseload power. So they're intermittent, they only last a few hours, and they only kick in when necessary. There are around 1,000 peaker plants in the US, and traditionally they've been powered by natural gas, but this is actually where renewable energy has made some big strides in the last couple decades. That same intermittency that makes renewables more difficult and challenging as baseload power options actually gives them an advantage in peaker plant use, but you still have the problem of the duck curve. The duck curve refers to the offset timing between peak consumer demand and peak power production. Take solar energy, for example. It peaks in the middle of the day, say noon to 3 o'clock as the sun's most directly overhead. But energy consumption peaks in the evening as people come home from work and turn on lights, TVs, ACs, and cook dinner, just as the sun's going down. And when you graph this out, it looks a bit like a duck, hence the duck curve. The duck curve is a deceptively cute sounding name for what is essentially the Achilles heel of renewable energy. Luckily, the energy that gets produced in the middle of the day can be transformed into a different type of energy that we can store in an industrial energy storage solution and then dole that out later on when it's needed. And here are some of the best ways of doing that. All right, the first one to talk about is pumped hydropower. We all know what hydropower is. You take a natural source of flowing water, and damn it, Setting up a dam creates a buildup of dam water that builds up some dam pressure, and then you open up the dam spillway. The dam water then turns the dam turbines and creates a lot of dam energy. Humans are basically beavers with more teeth. And this is great if you're near a river, which luckily many cities are, but if not, pumped hydropower is a good solution. Pumped hydropower works basically the same way as a hydroelectric dam. The difference is, with pumped, you have two different reservoirs, one at a higher elevation, one at a lower elevation, and a pipeline connecting the two. When excess energy is produced, like say in the middle of the day with solar energy, that energy is applied to pump that water from the lower reservoir to the upper reservoir. This stores the mass of that water as potential energy. And then when extra energy is needed, the floodgates open, the water flows from the upper reservoir to the lower reservoir, turns a turbine, and voila, energy. Now, I don't know about you, but I think this is really cool. And when I found out about this just fairly recently, I was like, wow, that's awesome. I hope that we can do that in the future someday. Yeah, not only is this in use, but it accounts for 96% of all the energy storage around the world. So there I go, being on top of things again. In fact, the largest pumped hydro facility in the world is the Bath County Pump Storage Station in Virginia. It's been in operation since 1985 and is sometimes called the world's biggest battery. Currently, there are 69 pumped hydro stations around the world with more than 1 gigawatt hour of capacity, and 37 are scheduled to be built by 2025, 31 of which are in China. You know, people love to dump on China and say that it doesn't matter what the rest of the world does in terms of renewable energy because they're polluting so much. And the thing is, yes, they do have a pollution problem, but they are currently investing more in clean energy than anybody else in the world. But yeah, pumped hydropower is awesome. It is the undisputed king of renewable energy storage. But the one downside is that you do have to have just a particular terrain in order to do that, which is why it's not really a shock that the biggest one in the world is in a mountainous area. It's also a huge construction project that takes a lot of money up front, but once it's in place, it can operate for decades, and it operates at around a 75 to 80% efficiency. Next up is hydrogen energy storage. In my video on hydrogen fuel cell cars, I showed how the whole process works, with hydrogen being taken out of water through electrolysis, stored in high pressure storage facilities, and then turned through a fuel cell in a car back into electricity that powers the car. Hydrogen energy storage is basically the same process except scaled up in order to power homes and businesses and whole cities. Now, I listed the issues with hydrogen storage in the last video, namely that the overall process is not very efficient, but the one good thing that hydrogen does have going for it is its scalability. Compressed hydrogen can be stored in pressurized vessels, and those vessels can be scaled up or down to fit whatever need you might have, like a car, a home, a business, a city block, a whole city. You can keep going. And it can also be stored in solid metal hydrides or nanotubes to compress even more energy in an even smaller space. But the really mind-blowing bit is that compressed hydrogen can be stored in underground caverns and depleted aquifers and abandoned mines. Basically, you take an old mine that's been depleted of whatever minerals you were getting out of it and just use that to pump compressed hydrogen into it. Now, this is not only handy, but it stores immense amount of energy. It's been calculated that a 500,000 cubic meter space could hold over 100 gigawatt hours of energy. To put those numbers into perspective, the Chevron Phillips Clemens terminal here in Texas has over 30 million cubic meters of storage. So the upside is these underground potential hydrogen storage places exist all over the country. The downside is the efficiency isn't the greatest. So that leads us to compressed air energy storage. Sort of on the same line as the hydrogen storage is compressed air energy storage, also known as CAES. Like I was just talking about with hydrogen, compressed air energy storage works in the same way. It just takes ambient air and compresses it under pressure in underground mines. That pressurized air is then later heated and expanded, and it goes through a turbine and generates power. Salt caverns are usually the preferred locations for several reasons. For one thing, you got flexibility, you have no pressure losses, and the salt doesn't interact chemically with the air. Now, current CAES plants use what's called the diabatic method, which basically means that the compressed air part of it is separate from the turbine part of it. That thing. What this means is basically you have an electric generator pumping air into the storage facility, preferably run by solar or wind energy, but then when it's time to get that energy back out, the compressed air is fed into the turbine and burned with gas, just like a jet engine. Now, this does mean that you have to use natural gas, but you get 3 times the energy output out of it for every unit spent, which means you get a 60% reduction in CO2 emissions. And there is an improvement on this technology that's known as isothermal CAES. Basically, instead of using turbo machinery in the plant, it uses in situ compression and expansion inside the storage. Now if this sounds like it's way over my head, that's because it is, but somehow it kind of uses the surface area of the cavern itself to manage the compression, or they can inject a mist of air to cause the expansion of the air inside and use that to turn things. Sounds like magic, but apparently it can operate the plant at between 70 to 80% efficiency and lower the cost of production. Bottom line, the Earth's crust is very Swiss cheesy, and we can fill those holes with gas to make more energy. That somehow sounded inappropriate. Next up is thermal energy storage. And this is energy stored using thermal temperature differences, either going hot or cold. One example is solar thermal plants that reflect the sun's energy onto molten salts or other materials. This holds that energy until it's needed, where it's used to generate steam, which drives a turbine to produce electricity. Or facilities and office buildings can create ice during off-peak hours, and then when they need to cool off the building, they can just use that ice to do that. Now, a couple of options in this field are pumped heat electrical storage and liquid air energy storage. In pumped heat electrical storage, electricity drives a storage engine that's connected to two large thermal containers. A heat pump moves heat from the cold container to the hot container, kind of like a refrigerator but massively scaled up. This heat pump can then be reversed to become a heat engine. This turns a turbine, and the electrons doth flow. Liquid air energy storage, or LAES, kind of goes the other direction, using energy to cool air until it liquefies. This is why it's also sometimes called cryogenic energy storage. This cryogenic frozen air is then stored, and when energy is needed, it's reheated, that expands, turns turbines, creates energy. There you go. There's a lot of different ways of doing this, and their efficiencies range between 50% and 90%. Now, obviously, if you want to talk about energy storage, you got to talk about batteries. I mean, this is kind of what they do. Utility-scale battery storage has become increasingly popular since the cost of lithium-ion batteries has gone down. They've actually gone down 76% since 2012. Tesla with their Gigafactory obviously plays a big part of this, but there's other companies like LG Chem and BYD in China that are all producing Gigafactory-sized production facilities for lithium-ion batteries. Now, most of these are meant for EVs because EVs are kind of the big hotness right now, but they're also producing, battery packs for homes and businesses and utility-scale systems. Tesla famously installed a 100 gigawatt-hour power pack system in Australia at the Hornsdale Power Reserve near Adelaide, and it's been projected to make back a third of its cost in the first year of operation alone. And as more lithium-ion mega plants start going online, we're going to see the cost even accelerate further downwards. I mean, if we've seen it drop 76% in the last 7 years, just wait until we get these big, huge mega plants going in the next several. Utility-scale battery facilities are going to explode in the next several years. And plus, utility scale actually gives you a second life solution for EV batteries. Now, a lot of people have groused about battery life in EVs, saying that the batteries are going to be useless in 5 to 8 years. Now, this has been completely disproven many times over, but it's true that eventually the operation of these batteries, the charge is going to go down to where it's not really optimal for cars anymore. This might be between 10 and 20 years, but even if the batteries lasted forever, doesn't mean the car around it is going to last forever. Either way, these battery packs can be repurposed for grid storage, and once there, they can be useful for another 20 or 30 years. And that's another reason why grid storage is going to go way down in cost, because these battery packs are going to just start piling up. It's not like toilet paper that we're just going to go through. These things last decades, and they're going to accumulate. And the battery systems are already starting to reach cost parity with gas peaker plants. In fact, this year, PG&E in California are replacing 3 different gas peaker plants with battery storage solutions that are going to be holding around 2.2 gigawatt hours of capacity. Now, there are other battery options like old school lead-acid batteries, nickel-based batteries, sodium gas batteries, but right now lithium-ion is the big bad. It has about 80% of storage capacity in the United States. Now, another interesting option is flow batteries. I kind of want to do a whole episode on redox flow batteries because they're really cool, but it's basically you have a liquid anode and a liquid cathode, basically a container of positively charged liquid and a container of negatively charged liquid, and they flow together into a fuel cell and create electricity that way. If you want to charge the battery, it just works in reverse. The electricity in the fuel cell feeds ions into the 2 separate solutions, and that charges them. Now, what's really cool about this over, say, lithium-ion battery packs is if you want a bigger lithium-ion pack, you have to produce thousands of those little cells, and you got to produce the wiring and the cooling systems that go all around it and everything. That's what you got to do to make a lithium-ion pack bigger. To make a redox flow battery pack bigger, all you got to do is just add more solution. Literally just give it a bigger tank. And if you want more power out of the battery, you just add more fuel cells. So it's really customizable and efficient. They run at around 95% efficiency. Now, in case you're wondering what's in those solutions, it's based around vanadium, which is not the most scarce metal in the world, but it's not the most abundant either. a lot of people are working on more organic solutions for that right now. Right now, China is working on an 800 megawatt hour flow battery plant, which would actually double the worldwide capacity for flow battery storage. But I think this is going to be a really interesting space to watch. I think this is going to grow really quickly. We need to keep an eye on this one. This next one is just awesome because it's just spinning things. This is Flywheel energy storage, which is basically a machine that holds kinetic energy using rotational momentum. In other words, spinning things. When, say, solar energy production is high, they use that energy to spin the flywheels, which maintains a consistent energy through inertia. They're essentially charging the battery by physically spinning hundreds of flywheels. The faster they spin, the more energy they hold. And then when that energy is needed, it's kind of like regenerative braking on an EV. They just use that rotational energy to create electricity, and it can kick in a matter of seconds. They're low maintenance, they've got long lifespans, and they have minimal environmental impact, and they work at pretty high efficiencies, around the upper 80%. The only downside is they're not very energy dense, and the more energy you need to store, the bigger you need to build. And right now, Flywheel energy only accounts for about 600 megawatts of energy in the United States. And last but not least is the gravity battery, which I don't believe is actually in use yet, but it's under development. And this works on the same principle as the pumped hydro storage solution, which basically you take a weight, and when energy is high, you use that energy to lift the weight up to a higher elevation, and then when the energy is needed, you lower the weight back down. Only instead of water, it's just weight. Basically, you build a deep shaft in the ground and then dangle a weight at the top attached to a motor and a generator. Weight goes up when it's sunny, weight comes down when it's not, and it uses that motion to turn a generator and makes electrons. The UK company Gravitricity developed a system that suspends weights of 500 tons to 5,000 tons in a deep shaft by several cables. They claim that it has a 50-year design life with no cycle limit or degradation, that it can go from 0 to full power in less than a second, and its efficiency is between 80 and 90%. All of this is super impressive, if it's true. They're currently working on a 250 kilowatt hour scaled prototype, and they're in talks with several different countries, including the UK, Poland, Finland, the Czech Republic, and South Africa, about putting systems up there and just basically using old abandoned mines that already exist to do it. Anyway, these are some of the options on the table, but as I said before, the future of renewable energy relies on being able to create these kind of storage systems. According to the International Energy Association, we're going to need 266 gigawatt hours of storage by 2030. This is in order to keep global warming below the 2 degrees tipping point, but right now, we're only halfway there. And our rising urban populations means we're going to have even more increased need for energy storage. Václav Smil is a distinguished professor emeritus at the University of Manitoba and a fellow of the Royal Society of Canada, and one of the world's foremost experts on energy. Bill Gates is one of his biggest fans, stating that I wait for new Smil books the way some people wait for the next Star Wars movie. And he's not exactly optimistic about things. Smil writes in a 2017 Spectrum article that since 2007, more than half of humanity has lived in urban areas. By 2050, more than 6.3 billion people will live in cities, accounting for 2/3 of the global population. This is going to require a massive supply of electricity to power their homes and their transportation and their businesses. Smil says we need a breakthrough, a low-cost breakthrough in energy storage, and that we are moving way too slowly in that direction. He told Science magazine, "Give me mass-scale storage and I don't worry at all. With my wind and photovoltaics, I can take care of everything." But we're nowhere close to it. Right now, 30% of energy production around the world is made by renewables, and storage lags way behind that. Obviously, there's a lot of hope in the battery space with the lowering cost of lithium-ion batteries, but some of these other solutions definitely deserve a shot, and it'll be fun to see them start to come online in the next few years. And if it does, maybe, just maybe, we can move past burning things. Now, to find out more about how we're going to meet our future energy needs, I can highly recommend the series Dream the Future on CuriosityStream. This series is hosted by Sigourney Weaver, and it looks at the future from multiple interesting angles. One specifically being the Energy of the Future episode, where they go deep on the energy usage projected for 2050 and beyond, and how we're going to meet those needs. And while you're there, check out the thousands of top quality documentaries and series from acclaimed filmmakers covering everything from history to the future to science breakthroughs and the human condition. Seriously, if you like my channel, you'll like CuriosityStream. You know, I see everybody signing up for Disney+, Apple TV+, all these streaming services. We are officially in the age of streaming services. And if you want a streaming service that offers really smart content that expands your horizons, CuriosityStream's a no-brainer. Actually, it's a big brainer, because, you know, science. And it's only $2.99 a month. That's like the best bang for your buck easily out of all the streaming services. Plus, if you sign up for that, you get a subscription to Nebula for free. Nebula is a service by smart YouTube creators for smart YouTube viewers. Some of the top educational channels on YouTube are a part of Nebula, where they're free to be experimental and make content that would normally be stifled by the YouTube algorithm. Some of your favorite creators are on there, and me, I'm on there too, if I fit that category. And you can get a month of CuriosityStream for free, along with your Nebula subscription if you go to curiositystream.com/Joe Scott. And like I said, it's only $2.99 a month after that. It's like a good cup of coffee a month. Anyway, this is like the best deal in the world, so CuriosityStream, if you haven't checked it out, links down below. Big thanks to CuriosityStream for supporting this channel, and a huge shout out to the Answer Files on Patreon that are helping me build a team, doing cool things, forming an awesome community. We got some new people I want to shout out real quick. Let me murder their names. Their names are Tombo Payne, Dave Thomas, the Wendy's guy, Oil St. Vier, Adam Vinson, Thomas F. Bolden, Anna Catherine Miles, James Tyron, Josh Crow, Brandon Bullock, Rad Donato, Kuthar Saleh, I know that one, Peter Jublitz, Keith Price, and Adrian Bell. Thank you guys so much. If you'd like to join them and get early access to videos, or more access to me, and just join an awesome community, you can go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe. T-shirts available at the store at answerswithjoe.com/store. You can get mugs, t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, posters, you name it, with cool, fun, nerdy stuff. They make great gifts, so definitely go check it out, answerswithjoe.com/store. Please do like and share this video if you liked it, and if this is your first time here, I invite you to check out this video, because Google thinks it's up your alley, and if it is, maybe check out some of the other videos I have, and if you like them, I invite you to subscribe, because I come back with videos every Monday and every Thursday. All right, that's it for now. You guys go out there, have an eye-opening week, and I'll see you next Monday. Love you guys. Take care.